all the time in HTML is lists. So, a lot of the web's content is actually lists. Think about your typical nav bar, for example. Just to take this as an example up here, this nav bar. Chances are this is probably a list, and then it's just styled using CSS. Think about, say, a products page on a store. Every product on there, it's probably an element in a list. So it's really important to have a good understanding of lists and the different types of lists you can create using HTML. Now, they are usually styled to a pretty high degree by CSS, maybe some functionality is added via JavaScript, but again, it all kind of comes back to the skeleton of HTML. And at its core, a list is pretty simple. So essentially, it's a list of things, and there's a couple different kinds of lists. You can have an ordered list, in which case order is important and they're numbered, or you can have an unordered list. So an unordered list would probably be used for something like a list of ingredients for a recipe, for example. That's a good use case for an unordered list. And then an ordered list where you'd say, okay, step 1, do this, step 2, do that, you'd probably want to use for the actual directions of the recipe, as a simple example. So I'll clear out some of these headers. I'll leave my H1 and my H2. And let's say instead of this test paragraph, I wanted to put some kind of list in here. And the first one we'll take a look at is an ordered list. Now lists are a little bit more complex than some of these other examples we've seen, because you have to kind of worry about nesting a little bit. So ordered list uses this syntax, OL. So I'll open my list here, and I'm going to put the closing tag on a separate line, /OL. Okay, and then all of my list items will go between this opening tag and this closing tag. And list items, they use the tag name LI. Right, so you notice that there's now a 1 over here. I didn't put a 1 anywhere, it put that in for me, because it understands that, oh, this OL, that means you want me to make an ordered list. But again, the browser is interpreting our markup here. It's saying, oh well, I know that's an ordered list. And then list items, and then you close off the tag here. And then anything you put in here will be listed as a list item. So if we're going with our recipe example, well, this might be the first step in the recipe. Right? So let's say add flour. Okay, simple enough. How do we make another list item? Well, as you can imagine, we just do another LI, and it automatically puts a 2 for us there. And remember to close off your tag right away. This one would be obviously step 2. So, I don't know, stir in eggs. And so on and so forth. So as many list items as you need. So stir in milk, /LI. Okay, and then as long as each of these LI elements is sandwiched between an OL element, it's going to be added into the ordered list. And the order does matter, right? So if I add a new element here in between 1 and 2, well, what do you think will happen? Let's find out. LI /LI. And wouldn't you know it, the order matters here. So this is now item number 2. We can say, I don't know, beat eggs as part of our recipe. Right, so that's an ordered list. Now what about if the order doesn't matter? What does that look like? That one, we would use a UL instead of an OL for that. UL stands for unordered list. Right, so they're kind of, I don't know if they're opposites, but they're kind of, that's the difference between the two, right? This is an ordered list, and a UL is an unordered list, /UL. And again, lists make up a large part of content on the web, and usually they're just kind of styled up with CSS. So UL, again, we just use list items inside the UL. And by default, it has a bullet point, just to denote that it's a list item. But this could be, say, our ingredients. So this would be, flour. You need flour for your recipe. LI. You need eggs. You could be 2 eggs, /LI. You need 1 cup milk, for example. And you can tell based on the use case which you're going to need. Right? Obviously, something like ingredients doesn't matter what order it's in, but something like directions, of course, order does matter. And just like before, we can kind of nest other elements inside these list items. So for example, if you wanted to put an emphasis on this flower, you use a strong tag, for example. And so now this is emphasized, but these are not. Same deal here, you could do em2/em eggs, 2 eggs, 1 cup milk, all kinds of neat stuff you can do. I also want to mention you can add comments into your HTML, and comments are really for yourself or other developers looking at your code. Comments are actually ignored by the browser, so it's a good way to learn. And whenever I'm learning a new language or new code feature, for example, I leave a lot of comments to myself because I find it very helpful when I'm going back and looking at it, just kind of reinforce that in my mind. And the way a comment works in HTML is you basically create it like this. So you open it with an angle bracket and then an exclamation point and then dash dash, and then you type your comment here. And then the way you close it is you do dash dash and then closing angle bracket. Again, so notice that this doesn't show up over in our HTML. This is purely for us, the developer, and any other developers looking at our code. So this would show up if you were to, inspect the source of this page, but, most visitors are not going to be aware of any comments. So again, good for just starting out, just learning. So for this one, you might want to say, this is an unordered list, whereas up here, this is an ordered list. So exclamation point, dash dash, ordered list, dash dash. So, I would strongly encourage the use of comments. It really helps cement the knowledge in your mind. And, if you leave your code and then you come back to it a week or two later, sometimes it's kind of like, oh, what does this do again? I don't remember what this piece of code does. Well, comments really help with that, especially for beginners.